Hey, welcome back to the Positive Side Podcast. Glad you're tuning in. The host, Jeremy Todd, coming to you live from the world headquarters in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Office is coming along. Got the new logo coming up next week. Can't wait for that big ass thing in the back wall. It's going to be dope. But I'm excited about the momentum of the show and excited about having people on the show that are changing lives. And today's episode is going to be no different than that. I'm going to bring my guest on, Tony B, in here in just a second. But it's interesting when people come to you and people come into each other's lives for a specific reason. And sometimes we don't know why. We don't know why the timing is in, and we don't know why this person is there. But, it's very similar to my guest today, Tony B. I've been working with Tony B one-on-one for about 6 months now. And, I got a funny feeling he's going to come in here and say that, I've maybe changed his life. I've helped him do a lot of things. But really, it's more selfishly for me. He's taught me so much about life, about caring, about persistence. I'm just so proud of him. And his podcast that he started, The Gray Path, it's probably top 5 podcasts for me right away. And obviously I'm biased a little bit, but when you guys listen to these stories and how he explains it, and, being I am a moderate Star Wars fan compared to Tony, but Tony's a genius when it comes to stuff like this. And the way he ties these stories in, he's changing lives every day. Tony B, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Kind of stole my thunder there, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, when being on here, and I made an Instagram post earlier today, being on the show was one of those things, we talk a lot about manifesting and thinking about something and then making it reality. Well, I've been listening to your show now for probably close to a year. You're the first podcast I actually really dove into, and listening to you, not to sound corny, it really did change my perception of life. It changed kind of my course, because listening to your show week after week, especially because there's such a backlog. So, I started listening to it, new episodes, and I'm like, oh shit, there's a huge backlog here. So as I dove into the backlog and started listening from episode to episode, I realized this is someone who I would consider part of my tribe. This is someone who really went out there and did what I always in my head thought about doing, which is touching people's lives. And as I went through episode to episode of The Positive Side and I kept listening to it, I realized this is something not only could I do, this is something I could be good at. And I want to be on this show. I want to have my son, because he listens to the show with me, because we listen to it when we drive. I want him to sit there one day and hear my voice coming from your show. And I did something I never thought I'd do, which was I hired a professional coach. And I'm sure you can relate to this. I hate to use the term alpha. I'm a very go-getter. I'm a self-starter. So it's hard for someone like myself to think, why would I need someone to help me get to the next level? But the truth is, for those what I call those of us out there, those of us who are overachievers, who are driven, you got to understand, it takes a village. You just can't level up consistently on your own. Sometimes you need a push, and Jeremy has been my push.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, my friend. And like I said, it goes both ways, because I just love the interactions we have, the conversations we have. They're all over the map, but they're very, very, at the end of the day, we get a lot of things done, man. And the podcast has come so far. So let's get into your show, because I really want to talk about how important your show is. Recently, and I know if you listen to some of these episodes that I've done on depression and suicide and all these things that a lot of people are struggling with, and then really gears into what your show is really about. It's really, it's finding those people that are just stuck in life, that may not fit in, quote unquote, what we determine that definition of fit in is, but it's relating with these people. And I'm telling you, brother, the lives that you're changing right now are unbelievable. It's funny. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. We're talking about how, we don't know who's listening, what I'm saying, but there's someone listening to every episode, and you're making a huge impact on their life. And one of these days they're going to reach out to you. I guess, number one, if I pull back to the very beginning, why did you, let's start with the name of the podcast. Why'd you come up with the name, and who's your target audience for the podcast?
So it's called The Gray Path because, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. I mean, I'm a geek in almost every field, but Star Wars is my jam. So it's called The Gray Path because my whole life, especially when I was younger, I never really felt like I fit in. Like, I wasn't popular when I was young, so I strived a lot to try to fit in with the cool kids. So when I got in, not that I was ever a cool kid, but when I got into their circle, I realized this isn't for me. And being a Star Wars fan, obviously there's the Force, the light side, the dark side. Well, to me, the light side is a joke. The dark side's a joke. The truth is in the middle. It's in the gray. And that's where the gray path came from, because I kind of fancy myself a gray Jedi. I don't look at the Force as light and dark. I don't look at life as light and dark. I don't look at topics as light and dark. I look at the whole thing and I choose to pick my own path through it. So the gray path evolved as this idea that we all have a gray path. We all have our own individual course that we choose to navigate through life. And what kind of sucks is a lot of people haven't taken the time to learn who they really are so that they can find their gray path. So that's where it came from. It started as kind of a dorky Star Wars reference, but as I thought about it more and kind of developed it more, I realized it's really our own individual path. I mean, when you listen to my show, you'll hear at the end of my intro, discover your gray path. That's really why I'm doing this. I don't want people to follow my path. I don't want people to follow, your path. I want you to follow your path. I want me to follow my path. And I just want people to discover something about themselves.
It's so important, brother, because man, like these people that get, and again, I keep saying these people, like it's like something, there's no negative connotation to this, but I'm just saying your target audience needs that message so bad, because man, I can imagine, like, I'll use my family as an example. My oldest son is 14. He'll be 15 here in a couple of months. He literally doesn't have a lot of friends, doesn't fit in. He's completely different. And I know deep down, he struggles with what he wants to make himself in his life. He doesn't know. And before your show, I think he can relate to a lot of other people out there that are in the same situation, that not only 15, 16, but are 20, 25, 30, that are like that. They're just going through life and they don't know what their path is because they don't fit in and they don't have anybody to talk to. And this gets into societal issues too, where, man, we don't know who to turn to. No one's like me. Your episodes, your podcast are so intentional to your listener. I listen to them and I get so much out of it. I'm like, man, I start relating to myself as a kid. And I think about my son so much when I listen to your show, because I get worried about him because he doesn't fit in. He is a different dude. And what your show does, it shows examples between different characters within Star Wars, and I'm going to butcher everything else that you get into, but it just really, you tell these stories that are so beautiful and well spoken about how it doesn't matter where you are, you're going to find your gray path. Your gray path is different. You have greatness within, as I can use my own quote, but it's very, very important that you do that. Tell a little bit, I guess, knowing that story I just told you about my son. And I'm going to hit you off the cuff, dude. And we're not going to prepare for this like always. Knowing my son, where he's at, describe to me one of the Star Wars characters that you can think of and tell a story, because I want people to get a little hint of your podcast and what it's like. And maybe use someone that you've already used or whatever the case is. Maybe it might be easier that way, but give me a story of someone in Star Wars that would relate to the situation.
So we're talking about a young individual. We're talking about someone who feels like he doesn't fit in, who feels like he doesn't have a lot of friends, and someone who really is trying to figure out his own course in life. So just off the top of my head, there was a Jedi in the expanded universe named Corran Horn. He later becomes a Jedi Master. What's interesting about Corran is when he joins the Order, if you will, this was after the events of Return of the Jedi. So, the Emperor's dead, and Luke is out there, and he's trying to start an academy because he's the only one at this point. So he goes around, and he doesn't have all these rules that the old Jedi Order had. He's not looking for just specifically kids. He's looking for people who are Force sensitive, who are maybe bringing something to the table that they don't know. And here's Corran, and he was a mechanic. He was a speeder racer, and he was older. I think he was in his 30s when Luke finds him. And Corran always kind of knew there was something special about him. But, at this point in time in the Star Wars universe, no one really remembers the Jedi. They were kind of erased from history. No one really knows what the Force is. So he just kind of knew he was different. He knew he didn't fit in. Well, enter Luke Skywalker, says, hey, buddy, look, you're actually something special. And Corran goes through, because unlike other Jedi, I mean, when people think of Jedi, they think of Sith. What do they think of? They think of Force chokes, Force pushes, telekinesis, the power, the ability to move stuff. Well, Corrin comes from a line that they can't do that for whatever reason. I forget what the official explanation is, but he has no telekinetic ability whatsoever, but he has a great empathy with living creatures. So there's a scene specifically I can think of in the new Jedi Order series where you meet Corrin's son, because this is, later on the line, he has a kid. And he walks by his kid who's also force sensitive, and he sees this rock floating across the ground. And he's like, holy shit, we're not supposed to be able to do this. Well, what does he discover? It's moving not from telekinesis. It's moving because his son has talked to these ants who are underneath it, lifting it and carrying it. And the reason I specifically go to that off the top of my head is you have your son who maybe right now feels like he just doesn't fit in, like the world left him behind. The truth of the matter probably is the exact opposite. And that's what I try to do with my listeners is I want to take someone who feels left out, lonely, that yearning to connect. And I want them to start looking at the world in a way to make them realize you're already connected. So what? You don't fit in with the cool kids, but that's okay because they're not your people. You'll find your people, but you first have to have the courage to accept who you are. I mean, how many times I was bullied terribly. I mean, you know the story, man. You yourself. I was bullied so bad as a kid, not just because I was a nerd, but because I had bad hygiene. I was poor. I was fat. Nobody liked me. And it's really easy to fall into that pit of despair because we're all seeking that connection. I'm trying to show people that just like Corrin thought he didn't fit in, the world told him he was nothing special. Lo and behold, he was great. And he didn't even know it. Sure, he can't use telekinesis, his family line can't, but you know what? Their empathy, their connection with other living things shows that he's special in his own way. So that's what comes to mind when I think of a story like that, because it's really about flipping perception. It's about realizing that you don't need the validation from those around you. You just need to validate yourself.
That quote you said, dude, so powerful, man. I'm going to put it on my whiteboard here. Have the courage to accept who you are, man. That is so freaking powerful, man, because, it's so true because we, I mean, even for myself, man, I mean, hey, I sometimes don't want to accept, that I'm 5'2", 130, it's hard for me to accept that and have the courage sometimes because it's when society looks at you, you're different, you stand out, you're a little bit odd, and that's okay. But having the powerful word there is the courage. That courage, man, that's a powerful sentence right there, brother, because that anybody listening to that podcast, this around the world can relate to that. Have the courage to accept that you may be overweight. Have the courage to accept that you're not the best looking. Have the courage to accept that you're not good at this or whatever the case is. Because that's where the beauty that lies in. Because when you accept that and you have the courage to accept that, and it's like everything else goes away. You're almost like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay that I'm 5'2". I'm totally cool with that because I have the courage to accept that. But everybody out there that's maybe going through this, that maybe isn't at the level that I'm at. And again, I still struggle with it. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to get over it. Like, what does that look like? But I think having the courage to just accept it and understand that, man, we're all individual. We all have this greatness. We all have this beauty that is within us. And if we don't have the courage to accept that, we're going to be chasing a life that's not ours. We're never going to be happy. We're going to chase drugs. We're going to chase, whatever you fill in the whatever the hell you want to put there, but you've got to have the courage to accept who you are. And I appreciate you saying that, dude. It's so powerful. And again, that's why I wanted to have you on because of, introduce people to the show, but man, it's just your message, bro. You're changing lives. And I know just that little story you told right there is part of the show, but there's so many other stories. When you started your podcast, we talked about who you were talking to. And I think one of the things which was really cool, we talked about having young Tony, who your what's that word for
avatar?
I always forget that word. Your avatar is. Explain to us who your avatar is and how you came up with that, and talk a little bit about young Tony.
Absolutely. So, and this is obviously a very personal topic to me. So, you'll hear the passion come out in my voice. So, exactly that. When we were conceptualizing the podcast and putting everything together, and we tried to isolate who the target audience was, there was no question from the beginning that it was for young Tony. Young Tony is me. It's me when I was young. And who young Tony is he is afraid. He is isolated. He doesn't have friends. He loves worlds that don't exist. He's obsessed with fantastical realms. And ultimately, young Tony just wants to have that modicum of acceptance. He just wants to be heard. He wants to be heard, and he wants to feel connection. He wants to feel like he's not alone. That's who I'm speaking to. I mean, we use terms like, those people or geeks, and we come and I have someone commenting on my show in the next, I think, month and a half who it kind of proves this point. And he actually believed he was the gentleman who first told me this. We're all geeks. We're all geeky about something. It doesn't have to be Star Wars or D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. It could be wrestling. It could be a sports team. We're all geeks about something. And unfortunately, in our society, and I say our society, I speak for the US because that's what I am. I'm American. We have stigmatized people for being passionate about something. And that is just depressing. How many times have you personally met someone who, when they talk about something, they glow, they light up, that energy just flows through them? And then you have people that make them feel bad for it. And it's like, oh my God, you just saw life. You just saw pure life is the best way I can explain it. And you quashed it because it doesn't fit your cookie cutter version of how you feel people need to be. And young Tony is that kid who was isolated, but if you got him talking about something he was passionate about, he exploded, he glows. And there's so many people out there that are like that. I do a lot of Comic-Cons for a lot of the side projects I run. And if you really want to see life, you go to them and just talk to a fan, someone who takes the time to dress up as a character. Sure, that might seem weird to you, but listen to them. Doesn't matter what they're saying, listen to them for 30 seconds and you will hear someone erupt in life, that passion. And it doesn't matter what it's about, if they're into anime, if they're into whatever. That to me is a glimpse of what it's like to break through all this depressive shit that sits, all this negativity that sits in our world, and let someone truly be happy. So at the end of the day, my podcast is reaching out to young Tony. I'm speaking to the younger version of myself, because when I was younger, no one was speaking to me. There was no one doing what I'm doing right now. So I'm being the person I needed.
Yeah, it's powerful, brother. Let's get to know Tony B. Tony, obviously you're living in the mountains in your mountain fortresses. I think that's what you call it.
Yep.
It's surrounded by woods. You're living in the middle of nowhere. You and your son, which again, I commend you for being such a great father and role model to not obviously your son, but there's so many other people out there that you lead just by example. What does Tony B afraid of? What keeps Tony B up at night? What is Tony B's fears in life? And how do you I guess accept those fears, and then how do you try and overcome those fears? Because I say trying, because I don't know if we ever become masters of our fears, but it's coming up with techniques and things that we can really work on, and what we're working on. Tell us a little bit about what Tony B fears.
So my biggest fear is stagnation. To me, and it's just who I am. I'm a very overachieving, driven person. To me, my biggest fear is running in place, is not progressing. When I am standing still, if you will, is when I am at my worst. Now, when I was a kid, as far as I'm aware, ADHD or whatever they want to call it these days, it wasn't in the vocabulary. Had it been, guarantee I was 100%. I have it, because I can't think of one thing. If I try to focus on one thing at a time, it's like getting a root canal. It's terrible. But I learned a long time ago that I can focus on 5, 10, 15 things as well as most people can focus on one. So as long as I personally, I gauge progress in whatever form I need to gauge it in. So, and it's because stagnation is my biggest fear. My biggest fear, my personal hell would be being in a position where I could never better myself. Um, and then as far as I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Well, what do you do to combat that fear? I mean, you mentioned you continue to move, but I mean, and I like how you said that the way you compare that isn't. I mean, it's not like you're putting numbers on the board. I mean, it's very easy for the weight loss. Hey, I'm my biggest fear is that I weigh too much, and then this is what I want to lose. Bam, this is exactly how I can draw that out. But what do you do? How do you track? Like you say stagnation. So if you're sitting still for a while, you're like, oh shit, now I got to do something different. What goes through your mind and what that process like to get to that next level?
So to me, sometimes I don't realize when I'm stagnant. Sometimes it takes perspective. But typically once I have that perspective, or once it comes to my attention that I'm stagnant or I feel stagnant, the first thing is this overwhelming sense of anxiety, which I hate. It's like the walls are coming in on you. So that's my first indication. I sense that and I say, okay, I remove myself mentally from the situation. I look at it and I say, all right, change needs to happen. Changes are coming. Now, when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, late teens, I was kind of known, maybe not necessarily something to be proud of, but I was known amongst my friends because about every 6 months, I would quit my job, move, drop whatever relationship I was in, and completely reinvent myself. Now, that's because I was young and immature and I hadn't quite refined my technique. As I've gotten older, it's a matter of lists are key in my world. So, I mean, I'm in a hotel right now because I'm working in Baltimore, but like even right now, like boom, I have little sticky notes everywhere where I can create progress, even if progress doesn't, even if it's not monumental. So it's all about finding a way to show your progress, even if you're not moving mountains. And it's that adage, how do you eat a horse? You eat it one bite at a time.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a great lesson for people that, if we go down to this avatar, this ideal client or for our ideal listener for Tony B, this guy sitting in this basement wondering, what do I need to do? I guess it's just a matter of making a list. And I think that's huge. I've talked about it in the show a million times. Checking those things off, celebrating the wins. I mean, get a win, man. Hey, I went for a walk around the block today. That's a win. Put on that list and check it off. It just, motion creates emotion. And when you start moving that wheel, that ball, and all of a sudden it starts getting easier and easier and bigger, and then boom, you're rolling. And I think that's so important to do. That's why I think I would second that. Making lists is so doggone important. Tony B, where do you see yourself in 5 years, hypothetically? I guess because the reason when you were talking there, and of course my mind runs a million miles an hour, I'm thinking to myself, man, 5 years from now, what does Tony B's life look like? Who is he impacting? What does that look like? I mean, are you speaking on stages? Do you have your own TV show? I mean, what does that look like? What would you consider a win in 5 years?
So for me, 5 years from now sort of looks like this. So as you know, you and I've talked about this personally. I run a lot of things. I make my money through a claims adjusting company that I created. But I have a lot of side projects. In 5 years, my goal is to have all of the debt that I have right now paid off. It's turning the gray path into more than just what it is. It's hopefully live speaking engagements. I'd like to go to schools and talk to, I'd like to go to those little assemblies I remember we all had, and everyone kind of tunes out, oh, they got the guy in there talking about what you can do when you grow up. I want to be that guy, because I guarantee that in a sea of maybe 500 or 600 kids, sure, you're probably only going to have about 10 that are listening. But if you can get the message through to one of them, it makes a difference. I want to start doing bigger speaking engagements at things like Comic-Cons. I've already started doing video episodes. I video all my episodes, but I want to start getting bigger guests on. I want to use my connections through Comic-Cons to maybe start reaching out to some of the actors who play characters that I talk about. And honestly, I just want to continue and hopefully grow and continue to change lives. That's really what I want. I want my son to hopefully be involved. I mean, he's 9, he'll be 10 next year. And it's about time to start his Padawanship, if you will. So
Yeah. You know, what I see in the future for you is working with people one-on-one too, my friend. And I see all the other things, speaking engagements, just dominating the scene, because again, I don't know if there's any other podcasts like this that are telling the stories that are, but the stories aren't bullshit either. They're so informative. I mean, man, I know, you know what you're talking about when I listen to them, and it's blows me away and it's fascinating. But what I really want you to do is start coaching people one-on-one, my friend, because and obviously that'll be something it'll hit you like a ton of bricks when someone's going to reach out to you, Tony, man, hey, I'm struggling. Will you work with me? And I think that's going to
Absolutely.
be the impact you're going to make, because there's so many people out there like young Tony, or the Star Wars character you mentioned, but that was 32 years old. There's people like that out there as well that are just struggling, that don't know, that aren't, don't have the courage to accept who they are yet. And that's what you're going to help people do one-on-one, which I there's no question in my mind that that's what's going to happen, because your passion, your belief, how much you care, man, dude, it just resonates through the show. And that's why I encourage everybody out there to make sure you search the Gray Path on social media, Instagram, and obviously YouTube. Like them on Spotify, iTunes, all the other good places as well, because we just got to get some more downloads, get this message out, and spread it as well. Make sure you like and share. That's the most important thing you can do, and leave those 5-star reviews for them also too. Tony B, you know the show, my friend. We go through 7 questions from John Maxwell, which are my favorite questions of all time. He wrote a book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. If you haven't read his books, man, check those books out. And they're amazing. I'm looking over at my office over there. I've got 2 or 3 in my eyes. Well, I see, I think it's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I got Leaders Eat Last. A couple of them. But anyways, check out John Maxwell's book, and also sign up for his Minute with Maxwell. I love that too. I get an email from John Maxwell every single day for the last 5 years, which is amazing. Tony B, long story. Question number 1 for Tony B is, Tony B, what is the greatest lesson you've ever learned?
So we talked about this before in some of our coaching sessions. Obviously, every time I listen to your episode and you go through it, I answer them to myself. Well, unfortunately, my go-to answer is kind of, we're just going to breeze past it. My go-to answer was to learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. But that's, I mean, that you kind of preach that. So I was thinking, beyond that, what, let's move past that one, because it's been said so many times. I think the greatest lesson I ever learned was, at the end of the day, you make the rules for your life. And that's a powerful thing that people don't realize. You set the rules to this game. It's ultimately up to you. Your limit is set by you. Your constraints are set by you. And if you can realize that and come to terms with it, and like we said earlier, have the courage to break the shackles that you yourself put on you, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, man, it's you're so right too. It just, we tell ourselves why we can't instead of telling ourselves why we can. And that little shift in mindset opens up so many other opportunities for you that are just, and what you said when you first started, being comfortable being uncomfortable, man, that right there, man, resonates the big time with me, brother. I mean, it always does. It always has. But man, I got some changes going on with some career changes that are going to be coming up here soon too, that are just, it's a good opportunity. But more importantly, I practice what I preach, man. I mean, I'm trying to get comfortable being uncomfortable and challenge myself and get out of these comfort zones, man, because that's the only way you're going to truly expand yourself and figure out what you're really good at, and what you're going to learn along the way. Is so important. Question number 2 for Tony B is, Tony, what are you learning now?
What am I learning now? I am learning to embrace the chaos. And it's a lesson I've experienced many times, but so much more so now, as I have opened up a brand new doorway in my adjusting company, like a new opportunity. But with that comes the pants shitting terror of just chaos. And that's the only way to explain it. When I went on this first deployment about a month ago, I had a fucking mental breakdown the night before I went, because everything was new, but it's like you enter college and you're like, hey, I was in high school and I can write a paper. And then you enter college and they're like, awesome, you need to write 15 papers for tomorrow. And you got to get to that point where it's like, all right, do I put my big boy panties on and I get it done? Or do I shrivel up in a hole and I die? And I realized that freaking out's perfectly cool. It's part of my process. Yeah. It's part of embracing the chaos. So it's like to come back to what you said about, comfortable and uncomfortable situations, I learned that lesson through jujitsu, because when you roll, you will constantly find yourself twisted and bent, and it's chaotic, and you can fight the chaos and make it harder on yourself, or you can flow with the chaos. So that's what I'm learning to do.
Joe Rogan had Rickson Gracie on the other day on his podcast, and he was talking about him panicking when he was caught breathing. Like he couldn't, when he was squeezed and he would panic, his mind was just out of control. So what he did, this is crazy, he went home that day and made his brother wrap him up in a rug as tight as they possibly could. And he laid there for like an hour. He said for the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it was sheer panic. Like he was going to die. The end of the world was coming, until he actually gained composure, focused on his breath, and then calmed down. He did that every day for like a month or some crazy shit like that. But that dude's a freak, obviously.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. I mean, and it's funny too when you were saying that about embracing the chaos and the craziness. I learned something. I'm always learning something, but I love this quote when people say, you hear it all the time. Well, how was your day? Well, I was so busy. Or what are you doing next week? Oh, I'm super busy. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm super busy. We're always busy, right? You're in high demand, and we're managing that in being in high demand. And it's a little bit different than saying I'm always busy, because aren't we always busy? I mean, we're always got something going on. I'm in high demand. I like that. It's just got a better ring to it. I like the way that sounds. So that's my new thing, Tony B. I am in high demand. I love it. Question number 3 is, how has failure shaped your life?
It's defined my life. And to build upon that, so to get where I am at now, and I am happy to say that if young Tony were to see me today, I think he'd be proud of me. And I also think he'd be like, how the hell did you get there? Oh, yeah. And the answer is, I have failed more times than I can possibly imagine, to the point where failure does not scare me. If I'm failing, I'm doing it right. I said this in one of my podcasts, just kind of came out, and I was like, holy shit, that's true. And it's, if you're not failing, you're not trying. I mean, it's that simple. If you're not failing, you're just simply not doing it right.
Yeah. One of the things I respect most about you is the situation with your son. Your past marriage didn't work out, and you have full custody of your son. And that's just something that's thrown on top of you, and you're embracing that. And that's not easy. I know it's difficult, but I know you well enough that you just, it's just part of life. But I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, it is what it is. But my friend, I'm so proud of you for doing that. I mean, perfect situation. Without failure of that relationship with your son's mom, without that relationship, you would not be in the situation that you are now, and embracing this one-on-one. Yeah, it's chaotic. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we're doing all these other things. But man, I mean, would you have it any other way now? You know what I'm saying? Without that exactly. Failure, which you probably thought was I mean, I know you did. It was a disaster, man.
It was bad.
It was horrible. But now looking back, you've got a new girlfriend. You've got you and your son living in the mountain fortress. Man, life is about as good as it gets. But without all that failure, you would never have all these things. Yeah, isn't that correct? It's just
it is. I look back on it, and it comes back to what we always talk about, which is it's all about your perspective. If you can shape your perspective, your life is whatever you want it to be. And you're right, dude. My divorce hit me like a 15 megaton nuclear missile. When I got the divorce decree, actually physically got it in the email, I was sitting in the parking lot of a Ross, and I just bawled my eyes out, because it was like, obviously anyone who's been divorced, you don't get that decree the next day. It takes time. So sure. I knew it was all happening, but it was at that point that the world kind of closed in on me, and it was a dark place for me for months, never knowing how I was going to make it through the other side. And to kind of speak to anyone who's gone through that, not just divorce, but any sort of world shattering incident, at the end of the day, it's going to sound cheesy, but it's true. Just think of Dory from Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming. Like, if necessary, stare at your fucking feet and measure your progress an inch at a time. Because if you do that, when you break through to the other side, you can look back and you can see how far you've come, and you're not overwhelmed, because sometimes when the world caves in on you, you can't look forward and have grandiose ideas. Sometimes just surviving is progress.
Absolutely, man. And that's powerful too. Just surviving is progress. And you're so right, man. Just getting through it. And, I mentioned this, we talk about suicide and stuff like that, man. Hey, don't just make it through it. Just survive that situation, that mental fuck up, and whatever you're going through. And it'll get better. It always has. It always will. But you just can never give up and keep fighting. Question number 4 for Tony B is, Tony, who do you know that I should know?
Boy, so this is the one that I have been racking my brain on from the first time I heard, because you know so many amazing people, and I'm in this tiny little podunk corner of the world. So ultimately, I'd say my best friend Lance. I think, and I've pointed Lance into the direction of your podcast, and specifically, I can't remember which episode it was, but you and Adam Walton did an episode not that long ago, and okay, I'm going to plug your own podcast here. If you guys haven't gone back, and I want to say it's like maybe 10 or 15 episodes ago.
Probably, yeah.
If you guys haven't listened to that one, it's titled Cryptocurrency. Listen to it. Don't let the title confuse you. It's really not about that.
A little
It
bit,
is.
but...
It's one of the most powerful things I've ever listened to. So, and I reached out. I sent that thing to a bunch of people, but I sent it to my buddy Lance. He's a college professor. He and I did our what's called our level 1 Muay Thai test together, and that's what I think what really bonded us. We knew each other. We had been training together for years, but that experience kind of drew us close. And he is my he's my perspective guy. When I think I have my head up my own ass, when I think that, you know, maybe I'm thinking about something in a like a pigeonholed or a tunnel visioned way, I shoot it to Lance because he can give me that third party perspective. He's not going to fucking lie to me. He's not going to try to kiss my ass. He's just going to say, hey man, this is what it is. Do with it as you will.
Well, I would appreciate the introduction for sure, my friend, and I'll make sure I connect with him on social media. And man, like I said, I'm just trying to build this organization of people that I know, just trying to get better, man, to get more perspectives and reaching out with random questions and random comments. I just think that it builds us all together. We get more powerful that way. Question number 5, I think, is what have you read that I should read?
So we're going to go down a trip down Geek Avenue. So,
absolutely. That's what I would expect, my friend.
So believe it or not, and I actually think I just plugged this in my recent episode, you really need to read the novelization of Revenge of the Sith. If memory serves, it's by, I believe it's Matthew Stover. And if that's wrong, please don't shoot me, Geek Universe. I think I'm going off the top of my head here. But it's the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, which is episode 3 that there was a movie for. And so it was written in conjunction. It actually came out about a week before the movie did. That book has so many, not only does it like obviously fill in a lot of gaps that the movie does or that the movie doesn't, but that book is like a treatise on manipulation and looking between the lines. Okay. He wrote that thing so well. And it kind of gets to what I do. You talk about how I tell stories and stuff on the show, and you're right, because in my mind, we can learn shit from anywhere. And there's, Magic the Gathering, collective card games, D&D, fantasy books. There's lessons in there if you take the time to look. Well, that book just has a really powerful lesson. I think if you read it, even if you're not a super Star Wars fan, he just does an amazing job of showing how Emperor Palpatine truly manipulated Anakin. The movie does a terrible ham-fisted job. Just one moment he's cool, the next moment he's killing kids. The book, there's so much nuance in the book that shows it, and it shows about the relationship he had with Obi-Wan. I mean, one of the most powerful scenes, sorry, I don't mean to ramble here. One of the most powerful scenes in the book is at the very end, and it's an inner monologue of what happens when Anakin wakes up in the Darth Vader Iron Lung suit. And I'm getting chills thinking about it. So he wakes up, and in the movie, okay, so for those who've watched the movie, it's this cheesy ass scene that everybody makes fun of. But in the book, he wakes up. He has like spotty recollection because obviously he just got fucked up. Yeah. So he wakes up in this suit. He's looking through fake photoreceptors. So he's not even seeing the world, right? He's looking through lenses. He's just in worlds of pain. And he asked Palpatine, what the hell's happened to me? And he explains. And then he said, well, where's Padme? And Palpatine goes, well, you killed her. And then everything kind of floods back to Anakin about what he did. And what's so fucking powerful about this scene is Anakin reaches out in the Force to Palpatine, which he views as like a black hole. That's how he sees Palpatine in the Force, as a black hole. And Anakin, when he wasn't missing all of his limbs and burned to a crisp, he was more powerful than Palpatine. So he knows how to reach out to that power. The problem is, at that point, he sees Palpatine for what he really is, this big manipulator who caused him to fuck up his life. So he reaches out with the Force to crush Palpatine. The problem is, he can't access that power anymore. He lost all of his limbs. He got burned to a crisp. His connection to the Force is not what it used to be. So at that point, he realizes he doesn't even have the power to kill this person who did this to him. And then the real powerful realization is he comes to terms with the fact that even if he had the power to kill Palpatine, he wouldn't, because Palpatine is all he has left. He killed the love of his life. He killed the order that accepted him. He killed kids. He drove Obi-Wan away. He has nobody. And this person who manipulated him and used him, even though he is the worst thing in the world, he's at least something. And that sets the stage for who Darth Vader is. And it's just powerful to read it.
I will have to read that one next, my friend. I just, because I told you I love the Star Wars. My daughter and I've watched them all a million times. She actually watched the Star Wars again today, which was the one when, again, I don't know what number they are. I always get confused with the numbers, but it's the one that they find young Anakin. He's flying the little, whatever that thing is, and he beats that
episode one. This is pod racing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Episode 1. Yeah. So she watched that again today. So, but we're big fans. So I'm definitely going to check that out. For the books that I've recently updated, with me not drinking as much as I have, I've been trying to read a lot more, and it's been super fascinating. I finished The Lincoln Conspiracy, which was just a brilliantly written book by Brad Metzger. I listened to, if you remember way back in the day, for all the listeners out there, I listened to the first conspiracy. That was about George Washington getting potentially, it was a conspiracy to kill him. This Lincoln Conspiracy, the same author, was awesome. And then today I bought Blood and Thunder, the epic story of Kit Carson and the conquest of the American West, which was a Joe Rogan recommendation. It's a long book, but I'm super excited to read that one. And I also bought Animal Farm by, was it George Orwell?
Yeah, George Orwell.
So I bought that today. I'm about 10 pages into that one too. So I'll keep you posted. I've heard that's a great book also, but I'm excited about all those. But for sure, I will read that Revenge of the Sith novel after that, because it just sounds good. I mean, the way you just explained that sounds freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's just really, he did an amazing job. He doesn't get the credit he should.
Well, it'll be great because I've seen the movie about 4,000 times. It'll be great to fill in all the blanks. So I'm excited about that. Question number 6 for Tony B. Tony, what have you done that I should do?
All right. So I'm going to plug my favorite place on earth. You need to go to Iceland. I know you haven't gone. Yep. I know you haven't gone. And I think everyone listening, no, disclaimer, I'm not getting anything from Iceland for this. I'm not on their payroll, but it is one of those tiny little nations that the world kind of forgot. And to me personally, I guess just like I tell everyone, you need to find your great path. I guess the truth is, Jeremy, you don't have to go to Iceland. You need to find your Iceland.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you need to find that place that when you go there, it's like talking about something you're passionate about. When you go there, you get that sense that you are more alive than you've ever been. And for me, that's Iceland.
That was very well said. Because, if I ever go to Iceland, it's going to be on July, because I'm not going to go there in the winter. There's no chance. I know you want to retire there. So I think there's something mentally wrong with you anyways to retire in Iceland. But I know that's your happy place, and I get it. I went to Ireland, I went to Switzerland, and they were beautiful, but the way you put that, you're exactly right. Those weren't I loved them. I mean, believe me, I had an amazing experience about this place. I love Ireland, but there's still something else out there that's waiting for me, and I have not found that yet. But we'll keep looking, my friend. I know the journey is going to be a hell of a lot of fun too. Question number 7 for Tony B. Tony B, final question is, how can I add value to you, my friend?
Honestly, the truth be told, and I know I probably listen to like half your listeners say this, and it's true, you just need to continue your path. You've done a wonderful job of figuring out what your great path is. You've done the hard work, the introspection. My best thing you can do to enrich my life is just continue on that path, continue sharing your positive message, and continue to shape the people around you. It's the best thing you can do for all of us, because if you're on your path, then you can help others figure out what theirs is. And if we can all get on our paths, just think how much better the world could be.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that's one thing that I think we jive so well together is the authenticity, right? It's telling real stories about our lives and what like the real shit. Like, it's not fake shit. It's real shit we've been through. And I put you on blast a couple of times talking about some of the situations that you've been with your life, but that's so important, man. That just makes you real. And the more we share these things, we're like, you know what? We're all in this together. I've got something similar like that too. and we quit hiding from that. We become, we become who we are. We have the courage to accept who we are. And that makes such a big difference with so many people that just haven't got to that point yet. But you just got to keep going, right? You just can never give up. Tony B, where can everybody find you?
All right. So I am on Instagram at The Gray Path. I'm on Facebook, The Gray Path. I'm on YouTube, which is The Gray Path. They can email me at seekthegraypath@gmail.com. If you're fans of like fight choreography, on my YouTube page, I also have a playlist of a fight choreography group I do called Saber School. So if maybe you're not a podcast listener, but you like to watch a bunch of people swinging lightsabers, a lot of cool stuff there. We do live fights. We've got one coming up in August, so that'll be a lot of fun. Really trying to grow the engagement on the Facebook page. So, shoot me a message if anyone out there, if they have a fandom they want to talk about, if they're going through a rough time, just reach out to me. I mean, I'm a talker. I talk about basically anything.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just so you've got your audience so dialed in, man. I mean, the people that are out there that are going to be listening to this show. And like I said, I love your show, my friend. I mean, it's just so good, dude. And you're so well spoken. And I encourage everybody to find a show, subscribe and like, and send those emails and share the episodes with people that you like, that like Star Wars. I mean, I guess that's the easy way for me because, man, if you like Star Wars, his podcast is just a plethora of information and great stories, very informational, very passionate. And then you get the story out of it to make you feel good at the end. So it's just so important. And like I said, I've already said it a bunch of times, Tony, I'm just so proud of you, my friend. You've come so far in such a short amount of time.
If I may real quick,
yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off. Just so for anyone out there listening too, I'm not just Star Wars. I mean, that I spent a lot of time on that, but
yeah,
I've got episodes on Dragonlance, Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. I've got stuff coming up from WandaVision and Dragon Ball Z and all kinds of stuff. So
correct.
if you're a geek, chances are I've either touched your fandom, that's what she said, or I'm gonna dial in on it.
yeah, absolutely. I always say Star Wars because it's the first thing that I think of. So that's my fault, but you're exactly right because the episodes are. I mean, there's some of the shit you talk about I've never even heard of in my entire life, but I love the stories and I love what you pull out of them. And I love the message. So it's just so important. So everybody out there, make sure you turn into Tony B. Make sure send me an email if you got. Let me know what you think of Tony's podcast. Let me know what he can do better. Tell him what he can do better. I mean, it'd be a lot easier for all of us.
Yeah.
But share those episodes, share his message. And man, again, we're all in together. We're all trying to get better. I say it in the end of every single episode. You've got greatness within. Like always, this is the positive side.